Okay, so coming back at you again, as promised, Wednesday, 7 on the Pacific Standard Time, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Welcome to The Way We Do It, and live from Altadena, California. I don't know if some of you know about Altadena, California, but it's been in the news lately. Mother Nature with those Santa Ana winds destroyed, I would probably say, about a third of our town. And we're coming back as much as we can. But there's remnants everywhere. But the human spirit is just that. You just got to kind of move on. So um, it's interesting. A lot of people came to this town. Um, I don't know if I told you a lot about my background before, but I used to work for BET for about 12 years, and I still produce. I'm an independent producer, and it's interesting. My phone never rang when all of these people came to town wanting to help Altadena, and Altadena is a very small place. So that's probably going to be a story for a later time. But today, I wanted to, I kind of like having a weekly because then I can find out what's happening in the world before I kind of get to you guys and give you a perspective. I'm very pro stand-up comedy. That's the world I live in. I don't profess to be a comedian, but I appreciate the art form. Um, and I want to do talk about comedy and entertainment from a different perspective, kind of more like from an academic perspective, from an insider, working in the business and teaching at the collegiate level. I'm able to kind of grasp concepts and bring it to you in a different kind of perspective. You have plenty of other sites out there that's going to give you the information from a very emotional perspective or opinion side, which is nothing wrong with that. But I just wanted to compliment that. So as you can kind of see from the title, Corey Holcomb and Godfrey beefing. What do fans do? Okay. So, and the reason why I pose it that way is, and I'll speak for myself, both of these comedians are extremely talented. Take a different approach to it, but they're both beasts. Corey, it's, oh boy, you talk about the old school kind of, in your face, says the things that a lot of people want to say, but he says it um, day in and day out, just a beast. And Godfrey gives to me a little bit more of a more of an international perspective from a black comedian. And man, his impersonations are just crazy. So I am torn in this because I like both comedians. They're both funny to me, and I'm thinking like, we get these little brush ups with them. And what's crazy about it is, well, not necessarily crazy, but someone had asked me about like where, is there like a comedy city? And I start scratching my head. I was born in Philadelphia, so I'm leaning back to Philly thinking. And I was like, when I kind of think of Philly, I kind of think jazz, you know, um, and more of the R&B side of things, Patti LaBelle, and singers like that. So, but in the comedy world, and again, you guys can have different opinions, and I don't know what it is, but Chicago just cranks out top stand-up comedians. I think it is because in the clubbing scenario in Chicago, humor is part of the club scene. Where say like New York, is rap is like the dominant thing. So you're gonna get the rappers, you're gonna get the DJs because the clubs are just like you go to a club for the music. In Chicago, you can go to clubs for music, but you can go to clubs also for comedy, and they're just as strong. And because of that, I think it breeds you got to have a talent pool. You got to have someone who's going to come through there, and you know, Bernie Mac. Come on now. So I think it's a breeding ground for a lot of talented comedians, and especially those who are successful in the stand up world. So for me, for them going at it, which battling in comedy, because that's what I was kind of raised on comics. Just kind of going for it. I mean, they joning on each other. It's a constant. It sharpens to me their comedic styles, and just like anything else. When you play sports, you got to practice, right? So you got to hit on each other, and then you hit on opponents later on, right? So you always got to kind of practice the skill. But for me, it's just like, okay, so now can we do something with it, right? So because in the Black community, we tend to have the beast, but we don't know how to then use that energy, use that. I know some of you who are into martial arts, and you get frustrated, and you got all that energy, and your teachers will tell you to take that energy and put it into your skill, that anger that you have, to drive it. So you take that negative stuff and you drive it to be better. And so I was thinking about it since the last time I talked to you guys. It's like, well, what can we do here? And again, I like both of them, and so it's not a problem for me. It's kind of entertaining in a sense, because I don't take comedy like serious in the sense of, like, they're comedians, they're supposed to make us laugh, right? So some things that people don't think is funny, I mean, that's just part of the stand-up world, right? So that's why I give them so much respect, because they put it out there, and they have their styles, and they kind of go for the things. So I don't take it serious in that standpoint. But I do think, as a community, we should start thinking about, like, okay, well, how do we take something like this where it could be beneficial to both? Let's think about, they're both stand-ups, they both go on the road, they're both from Chicago, and they both have successful podcasts, right? So their podcast is now an opportunity for us to look at television a little different, something a little more authentic, less canned. And so being on YouTube allows us to see them, and give perspectives. Their formats are a little bit different, and that's why it's like, um, uh, looking at both is cool. It gives me something better to look at than a lot of stuff that I'm watching on television. So, and what I want to encourage you guys to do as comedy fans is not to necessarily take sides, right? I mean, you can take sides in the conversations you're having with each other, but not taking sides where you just totally excluding one for the other, right? Because we need to add more people to the pool, when we start talking about entertainment. And so, I was thinking about it before I came on live, and I was thinking, oh, okay, what could I suggest to kind of keep this thing going in a way that is entertaining, right? Because my perspective here is to give you guys, and again, like and subscribe, and I would definitely be checking out your posts and looking at those for future shows, and be responding on that, and get your opinion. So next week, if you got an opinion on this, or emotional opinions, let me know what that is, and we'll talk about it. But up until that point, then I'm just gonna kind of give you suggestions. So my thought is, th- they have camps, they have views, and just like the singers did that. Remember, the singers, about a year ago, coming out of COVID, they did that kind of like competition, one singer versus the other singers, playlists, and the internet. The audiences loved that because you were able to kind of see both sides. So for Corey and Godfrey, maybe you find a neutral site, and just like if you were just being comedians on the street, just going at each other, in our neighborhood, it's called the dozens, hitting at it. Do a dozens. right? Just hey, just remember 8 Mile and the rappers get up on the stage and they go after it. Um, that would be a really cool thing, right? So you're not, neither one of you is losing anything, but collectively you can make it a bigger event. And then, as you guys are starting to secure bigger things, use that as a catalyst to announce bigger things in your comedic lives. Because I know that being on the road is rough, and it takes a toll, and both of you guys have proved yourselves worthy. And when I watch your shows, I can see where you're leaning into Hollywood taking a different approach for you guys, but you have reservations about the membership fee of a part of Hollywood that you don't want to be involved with. And I understand that. So there has to be a little bit more independency of doing that. And remember, Hollywood is a concept, right? So especially nowadays with streaming, destination Hollywood. That's why Hollywood, the studios are struggling, because Hollywood is everywhere now. You can do your little bit of Hollywood in Chicago. You do a little bit of Hollywood in Philly. I'm working on something. You do a little Hollywood in New Jersey, right? So, but it's a concept of entertainment and going around the world. And just as a thought, maybe you guys should do something like that. Maybe you should just like, you know what? We're gonna keep our beefs because we just don't. We agree to disagree. But now take that energy in a positive way and give the fans something. It's like wrestling, right? It's like two enemies going at it in a wrestling match, man. If you're with the Undertaker or you with someone else, I'm kind of aging myself. Um, one other guy, I'm just not. I'm just refusing to reference his name anymore because he's just a racist, and I'm just not. I'm just not going for that anymore, man. Who you guys know who I'm talking about, and so I'm not. I'm just not. Nope, nope. That's the line. I'm just not. I'm not playing. I'm not playing with that. No, 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 no. Not doing that. No. No. You had a bad childhood. No, you didn't understand. That's out. So I'm not even mentioning your name anymore. I'll mention everybody else's name before I mention yours. Uh, and do a comedy. You know, bring it on. And if not that, I mean, do it like they did the challenge. Someone put in the box what the challenge was. The music artist did, right? Remember the music artist did those challenges. What did they call that? Oh, I forgot what they call those that music challenge where you put up your body of work that's theirs. Oh man. As soon as I get off the line, I'm gonna probably find out what it is. Uh, but it's gonna be too late. And I'm quickly looking. I forgot what it is. But you guys know what I'm talking about, right? So they put up their music, their library to someone else's library, and they went at it. And and it was produced as a television show. Remember, I'm big on creating production, and you know, I think that would be good for the comedy world to put out there. So just kind of think about that. I don't know where you guys are from, but before you leave the planet, you should go to Chicago, right? Chicago is and to me, and it's just me, my own bias. Now, remember, I'm born in Philly, uh, but I think, and when you go to Chicago, there's so much to do. I think the only downfall to Chicago is the weather, right? It's just after Labor Day until I don't know, maybe February or March. I can't go up there. But as far as a town, to get around. And I would suggest if you go to Chicago, go to Chicago with someone who's from Chicago so they can take you because it's a major city like any other city, and you just can't be just zooming around all by yourself. So don't go up there blind. You got to be smart. I was fortunate when I went to the University of Houston. A good friend of mine who was from Chicago. I think he went to Fenger High School. I don't know if Finger's still around, but he went to Finger back in the day. And I'll just give you his first name so that everybody who knows me knows what I'm talking about is Tony. And he really was like the tour guide that you really want to have when you go to a city. He was very proud of his city, and he showed me all of the city, not just the neighborhood that he grew up on the south side. He took me everywhere. We went to Little Italy to get something to eat. We went up there. I forgot what that college is on the other side, kind of like a little Ivy League kind of side. We went over there to get some. Well, I was drinking beer back in those days. Drink some beer. I just went to some of the events. Oh man, and it was all you could get to. We went down to the museums, went down to the waterfront. I mean, he gave me the full. And I say that when you go to these cities, man, go get the whole thing. Like for me, I'm probably gonna go because there's somebody black that's gonna take me there, and we're gonna knock out the black side of town. And there's always a black side of town in most cities, unless it's all black. But even there, you'll tend to uh, navigate to one particular area. Um, eh, for me personally, growing up in Pennsylvania, like I said, I was born in Philly, but I grew up in a town right outside of West Philadelphia called Yaden, Pennsylvania. And so my experience of Philadelphia was, and if you're from there, it was, and where Yaden is like Delaware County, right? And so Delaware County into West Philadelphia, and that's where most of my relatives were in West Philadelphia, and a few in South Philly, a few in South Philly. And that was my only pretty much reference to Philadelphia was West Philadelphia. Our church was in Sharon Baptist Church was in West Philadelphia. So my relatives were in West Philadelphia. So there wasn't really no reason for me to go anywhere else. So either I did my shopping in West Philadelphia, Center City, or back in the suburbs where I was, right? So um, that was, and the way our towns were back in those days, we had everything in our little town. So even my little town had its own police department, its own fire department, its own grocery store. You know what I mean? So it was kind of self-contained. It's elementary school, junior, senior high school, right there, one block, bam, bam, bam. So you're there. So, you could pretty much stay in your small community and not really move a lot. And then for me, my father was from South Carolina. My mom was from Virginia, and we tended to, in the summers, go to Virginia for the summers, So, and fortunately, my uncles were fishermen and crabs and oysters, and we kind of did that stuff. And then, not as much on my father's side. My father passed away when I was 11, so didn't go to South Carolina that much, but enough to meet his brothers and sisters and a little bit of my extended family there. But even my father's side's family was in Philadelphia as well, and my mother's side's family from Virginia was in Philadelphia as well. So it was very narrow. And to be honest, I told you I went to the University of Houston and Howard University. That's where I graduated from. When I went to Howard, I met people from Philly, from the other sides of Philadelphia that I never really went on. And they were, uh, girls were going to what was called Girls High, was in downtown Philly, and Central Highs were a lot of guys. In Philly, they had a high school. Central was for boys, Girls High was for girls, and that was sort of like kind of like a magnet school in Philadelphia. But there was nothing in my town. We didn't play sports against city teams, right? We played sports with other suburban teams within our county. So, there was not an interaction. But when I went to Howard I met folks from Howard who were from Philly, then when I would go home for the summer, it's like, hey, what you doing? So now I'm starting to travel to other parts of the city of Philadelphia I've never been to. So if you're from there, going up to Mount Airy and the other side of town, I was like, wow, because I'm thinking, most of the Philly was like what West Philly was like and what the part of South Philly was like. So when you are traveling, man, see if you could do that. And that was my hometown that I didn't even really know all of my hometown. But getting back to Chicago. So, dancing was cool in Chicago. There's something about the Midwest. I mean, they're welcoming, they're open, really cool. Being from the East Coast, the group that I kind of gravitated to next was people from the Midwest, and I don't know what it's about people from Ohio and in Illinois. I don't know. Maybe it's the work ethic. I don't know. It just I gravitated more to them. So I really enjoy Chicago, and uh I would recommend all of you guys to go. But that winter, and that to me is the only reason why Chicago to me is not the number one city, because it's just too cold, man. When that shuts down, I'm like, it is no joke. I had a one of my roommates at the University of Houston as well, Timothy. I'm not gonna say his last name either. Tim, he was from Chicago too. Cool. I mean, these folks they were just, I don't know if I was just getting the best bunch, but they were cool. And stand-up comedy is just intertwined in just how you move in Chicago. And Damon Williams is from up there. There's just a lot of people on the comedian side that Chicago is their home, and I'm glad whatever is in the water that's doing that, that they can continue to do it. But my biggest thing now is how do we as fans and supporters of comedy, especially stand-up comedy, and that talent that we've generated year after year after year, how do we support them? Now, let me just kind of, this is not I'm just not going to tell everything, but one thing you have to understand, and it's like anything, I think, any kind of art form, is that stand-up comedy is there's competition to it, right? Because when you watch stand-ups, there's a reason why there's a certain order that people come out in comedy, and headliners and people who open up. That's all kind of earned, and there's a lot of competition there, because people are like, why don't comics get along? And I think that's kind of an unfair scenario. Think about stand-up comedians as like quarterbacks, right? And so, you don't necessarily platoon in quarterbacks in football, right? You fight, 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 and then there's one quarterback. So the headliner is sort of like is that one, right? So there's a constant competition. And if you weak on something, that's the quarterback that's next wants to come up there in their spot, and they're just as talented as the first ones, but there's only one slot. So there's a lot of competition, and the better you are as a comedian, the more you're going to have that. And unfortunately, there's going to be some bridges and some, sore feelings over the years. And, comedians just don't forget stuff, right? So, some people will call that petty, but, just it is what it is, right? And so it makes it tough. And I was talking to somebody because they were asking, like, remember, and I asked you guys last time about where's the platforms, you know, where's the new Comic View, where's the new Def Comedy Jam, for Black comedians, and why is it such a struggle? And I've seen attempts to do that, but I think there's a problem with the industry, how they're trying to select how to do it, and it just, to me, that they don't have really a good understanding of stand-up comedians and how they get to where they to get to, and then you asking them to do something a little bit different. And so what I've noticed, and again, I take this from being an executive producer at Comic View and having my own sketch comedy show, is that because I was not a stand-up comedian, I think that that's an advantage in creating a show or a format for stand-ups. And why do I say that? Well, because there's no beef with me, right? So if I was a comedian and I had a show that I was one of the comedians to come on, Some of those comedians that probably should be on, I probably would have beefed with some kind of way, right? So there'd have been some bad feelings. And so the product that we now have is going to be tainted, right? Because there's certain people that we as fans want to see, but they're not going to be airing because the comedian who runs the show is like, no, I'm not going to have that person, right? And I'm not taking away from the justification of why they're doing that, but as far as creating a show, fans, we're not looking at that. It's like when I look at a tape, you're funny. And I remember my boss used to say, "It's like, look at all the tapes," which I had to do. I'd look at all the tapes and reach out to the funny people. Period. Not that was it. And so I wasn't looking at any like backstories or, they did this person wrong over here, da da da. I didn't know anything about that. All I saw was how they performed on the stage, and what I tried to do if I knew I had some kind of bias with certain kind of comedic skill. Like sometimes you have storytelling comedians and you got like attacking comedians, you got, comedians that just do have different kind of styles, different areas of the country, it comes out their style, their presentation is a little bit different. So New York comedians gonna be a little bit different than Atlanta comedians, gonna be a little different than Houston comedians, gonna be a little different than Bay Area comedians, but they're all comedians and they're all funny and they all have a place and they all have audiences. So what I just had to make sure is that I didn't create any kind of barriers, male, female. I'm like, it didn't matter to me, right? If you're funny, you're funny. So I didn't have that issue. So I learned a lot of that. And because of that, there's not going to be any beefs on my set because I don't have a bias, right? So, but if you're like, say, for example, like I remember when BT approached Kevin Hart to take over a Comic View, and I was like, that's not going to work. And they're like, why is that not going to work? I said, because it's Kevin Hart, there's going to be comedians that's going to look at him a certain way, right? Some are going to be liking him, some are going to be disliking him for whatever reason, right? Because they're competitive. Those comedians are competitive people because that's how they provide their skills, right? And so I'm like, he's not going to get all of them, and when he goes out to find people, he's going to be because he is a professional in that way. It's gonna, he's gonna have a certain angle that he's gonna be taking, right? And his people are gonna have a certain kind of angle, and you can't have that when you're trying to create a platform for all. So again, remember from last week, and I mentioned to you guys that pretty much the two big platforms for Black comedians and urban comedians, if you want to use that as a term as well. Comic View was the non-cussing, and Def Comedy Jam was the cussing, right? So you had that too, and it canvassed everything, right? So it Comic View did a little bit more of the up and coming, not as known comedians, and Def Jam uh, took on comedians that were starting to trailblaze and it was starting to get a bigger audience. So you had all comedy working, and now all of that is gone. And I don't think the networks have the kind of personnel that are still there that can pull that off again. They'd have to really pick up the phone and call us old cats that did it before to come back and do it again. Uh, and I can only speak for myself, but to come back and do it again, if I do it again, I'm going to train people to do it so that I can leave, right? Because I got other things I want to do. So it's not like for me to come back and stay. You know what I mean? So it's like, because I think there's a missing producers, the producing of comedy, the producing of Black products, producers, not on air talent, not agents, not lawyers, not network execs, but real producers who know how to produce content, right? Know how to do pre-production, know how to do production, know how to do post-production. Some of Some of these terms you guys this might be the first time you've ever heard it. Um, know what a paper cut is, know what a producer's role. This is one thing that just irks me, right? So in creating a product, once you have the tape and you got to edit it. Some of you guys, with your laptops, you're editing, putting your stuff together. But when you're doing it in big scale, you're going to hire an editor. And there's two people that's normally in the edit bay, right? The editor and a producer. And they have two distinct roles, right? The editor is grabbing the stuff. The producer is supposed to come in with what we call a paper cut, means the producer's coming in with how they see the segment or the show cut, and then knows where those pieces are because they were there when it was shot, and the editor is putting those pieces together. And then the editor, after he puts those pieces together, he or she then starts to look at how to make it even look better. But when reality shows came around, and reality shows, by definition, don't have writers and writing producers who put things together. They just shoot it all, throw it in the edit bay, and then force the editor to put it together. That lack of post-production skills that the producer used to do is gone. It's very few. No one's doing it anymore. And so they put the pressure on an editor to be a producer. And that's not an editor's job, right? Editor got enough to do. They're not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to come in, and that's what I would be doing. When I train producers, once we do our pre-production, once we shoot the stuff, and then once they got to cut that stuff into shows, they go into that edit bay with that editor with something in their hand, not go into the edit bay and then think about what they want to do. That's wasted money. That's wasted time. That's not how you train. And so we kind of lost that skill set, and that's what we need to get back to build this stuff again. That particular piece, the producer who's in the edit bay, the producer who is in post production, that producing skill I don't see, and you got to have that, right? Because that's what's going to make things efficient. When you make things efficient, you bring down the costs. When you bring down the costs, you could do more product. And now we're developing again. So, we're creating editors. We're creating these producers who know how to produce. And producers, that's what they need to do. Producers shouldn't be talent, right? When I was doing shows, I tried very rarely to be seen a lot, right? Because I'm not supposed to be all out there. It sends the wrong signal, right? So everyone has their role. And so in my case, when I became a producer and a director, well, that's a little different, because now directing, means I need to be with the talent because we need to go over some things, because that's a different kind of skill set. But when I was a straight producer, pulled that. Very seldom seen. When I was a financial producer, you very seldom saw me. There was a joke. They called me G Money. I'd come, pay the bills, pay the talent, be very low key. Because again, you don't want your money person everybody know who they are, right? Because I don't need nobody follow me to my car, right? That's crazy. So I learned all of those lessons. But when I came on the creative side, then that's when I really started to see how, now I'm very good with budgets. And now on the creative side, I'm very good with that. And so that's when I saw them beefing like that, I didn't go into the substance of it, because they're comedians, they're talent, man. They, they do what they do. It is what it is. It's entertaining as long as they ain't throwing no blows, right? And again, I was watching one of Corey's podcasts, and even when he was going in hard, and he always kind of pulled back. It's like, yo, man, these are jokes. And see, that's the part that I hope everybody's picking up on, because he will do that. He goes in hard, but he's like, he's not a criminal. He's not. He's like, yo, these are jokes. And so that's that stand-up craft, right? And so that's why I want to make sure we understand what that is. And then what I'm suggesting is to then add that little piece where you could take what looks like, ugh, 'cause as soon as you hear the word beef, it always kind of has a negative connotation because a lot of the experiences we have with beefs in sports and in the music, but they don't have to be. I think it makes compelling television. For example, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, they created that tension, right? It's almost like a play, right? And it was just like a perfect play, right? So you got a rural kid who was white, you got an urban kid who was black. One went to Indiana State, one went to Michigan State. They met in college, they battled in college, then they come out. I'm from Philly, so Sixers is my thing. So I can't stand the Celtics, right? But not in an evil want to kill someone, but that's just that competitive thing. Philly people, we're like that. It's anything Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, ride or die, right? Couldn't stand the Celtics, right? So I didn't really have anything, it was the Lakers and the Celtics, but again, they created that rivalry, and it was like, but it didn't become violent, right? But it just made it competitive. And we all have that. We had that in the high schools. There's a rival high school, most of us. There's always a rival high school. Um, in my county, our rival high school, we were Yaden High, and our rival high school was called Darby Township. Just it was what it was. And then later on, when I became an adult and met people from Darby Township, and sit around and crack up. But when you're 14, 15, and 16, that's serious, right? That's like, yo, man, I ain't. I mean, you ain't hanging out over there. You're not dating any women. It's just like nothing. It's just like boom. You're just in your little thing. So again, so we have these things that don't fume up into like violence, but in every area is competitive, and so what I think should happen there, and again, because I don't have any beef in that camp, and to say to you guys, that's why sometimes you have to have, like sometimes like in your own family, you and your mom or your dad, you're beefing, and then that's why that auntie or your uncle comes in and just comes in and just be like, "What's she doing to that little boy? Leave him alone." What I mean? It's like sometimes you see someone who's not in your immediate family to kind of just come in that you can respect, that just changes the dynamic of the whole beef, right? And I love that when my aunts and uncles used to do that, especially my grandmother. There's nothing cooler, Mom. I know you're gonna kill me for this one, but there's nothing cooler than your grandmother putting your mother in check. Oh my goodness, that happened. I saw that only once because my mom wouldn't allow it to happen anymore. But we're at my grandma's house for the summer, and something happened, and I finally, and I was young, I was a kid, but then my grandma put my mom in check because it's like my grandma's house, and my grandma was like, boom, and my little eyes was like, whoa, what is this? Because my mom was God. My mom, that's it. There is nobody that gives me orders. Boom. It's like, and then my mom got shut down by this other woman, and it was my grandmom. I was like, oh, grandmom is the one, right? But my mom only let that happen one time. Uh, she didn't let us see that. I tease her about that every once in a while, Thanksgiving and Christmas, about when grandma put mom in check. So my grandma's no longer with us. So it's a fond memory. But all right, so back to what we were talking about with this comedy thing. So for Corey and for Godfrey, please, it's coming from someone who's totally different, different perspective. Turn that turn that into some good product that for both of you, right? Because if you got your product, he's got his product, and then you put this little thing together, and he creates. It's almost like creating a boxing match, right? You need two components. Those of you who love to see Rocky and then seeing Creed, you can't have Creed without someone else, right? You got to have the other person. Everyone's got to play their role. And in the case of Creed, it's a movie, right? You got a hero and you got a villain, and they created a movie around it. So take that. Um, I think fans would love to see it, and I think fans will pay for it. and it becomes a different revenue stream. Because I know both of you have aspirations on doing maybe film and television a little more independently, but you need money to do that. So I me knowing that my 20 bucks will allow the both of you to pursue film and TV in a way that benefits the community, that's a good 20 bucks sold. You know what I mean? So we got to start thinking a little bit more entrepreneurial, and we got to start thinking of how we can take what we have. And remember, this isn't Hollywood doing this. This is just internal to the two of you and the fan base who's been responding to you. Because I see you guys' views is off the chain, right? People are interacting, and people are having a conversation about it. And I think it's important to be able to do something like that. And I think everybody wins. The Black community, we're the last community that, and I think, and I've been hearing this, unfortunately, with sinners, man, full of people is like dissecting sinners and all kind of stuff. Oh, now I saw some political pundits using it for politics. And I'm thinking nobody's talking about opening up another genre, because, my preference, as I talked to you before, is horror and monsters. Now, this has vampires. And the last time we had anything vampire-ish was Blackula. So now this opens up an opportunity for more people, more Black people, to get into the vampire genre. But no one's talking about that part. Now we're talking about still dissecting, and why do you use Irish people for that? And now, remember, it's a movie. It's not a movie on total true history, right? Because there's some issues in there that are not factually correct. There's that Chinese American history in Mississippi is a little different than what was presented there. But I give him a pass because at least he's now engaged that there were more people in the South besides, and I don't know how many of you guys knew it, there's more people during that era of the South. There was more than just white and Black there that had to figure out how they could survive. Matter of fact, I was told, I think this is correct, but it was Filipinos were the first ones in Mississippi. Then the Chinese came. That's what I was told. So, but just the mere fact knowing that it wasn't just Black and white, and there was other people sort of on the sidelines, other people that Black people had to deal with at different levels, right? Because white supremacy is all about pecking order. So now there's these other groups of people that are in our world, because we're always pushed to the bottom. That's just that it just is what it is. We have to move forward knowing that. But let's look at what this now opens up for us. And because the country's responding to the show, and when you look at Sinners, man, it's, people are like, well, it's the Black people, but it's not really Black. I'm not getting all of that. There's Black people, a Black man. It came out of a Black man's head, and this is how he saw the world. And that part of the world that he saw had a lot of Black people in it, and that's the one he was doing. So there's going to be a lot of Black people in it. Duh, right? If he shot it in Utah, probably a different kind of cast, right? It could still come out of a Black man's mind. It came out of his mind, his perception of Utah. Ryan Coogler could do a movie about Mormons if he wanted to. Why not? Right? We have white directors that did The Color Purple, right? So it's just coming out of your mind. And in this particular case, where it's set, just like if Ryan Coogler wanted to do a movie in Japan, well, guess what? The cast is going to look like, right? So we got to get out of, and it's your perception of the world. All of us have a POV of the world, right? Coming from your lens. We wake up, we go outside into the world. It comes from your POV, whatever color you are. That's how you see the world from your perspective, right? If you come from a neighborhood like mine, that was a little more integrated, then I tend to have a little more integrated perception of when I create stuff. Because as a child, I had that little bit more of an integration in my mindset. Now, it didn't take away from my blackness. It just meant that there was other people in my kindergarten besides people who look like me. And I didn't look at them higher or lower than me. And I think that's the case. It's like there wasn't nobody's ice was colder than my ice. Your grandma was not better than my grandma. You have a grandma, I got a grandma, right? You got mommy, daddy, I got mommy, daddy, right? I got my skateboard, you got your skateboard, right? But I see it a little different. My experience is a little different. So in my family, I had uncles that were fishermen. So my summers had a different experience. So if I were to write something about what a summer was like, I'd probably start with that because most of us write our own truisms, right? Our experiences. I didn't have an inner city experience other than when I went to meet my cousins who lived in West and South Philly. So from that perspective, if I was writing that, I'll be writing it from a perspective of me going to visit my relatives that were in West Philly or in South Philly, right? Because that was my perspective. But I'm not gonna go inside and be like, yeah, this is what I was to be in the inner city. When I watched The Shy interests me because I didn't have that kind of experience. So that's what it interests me for. And I'm glad that it was being done. Now, what I would say about urban experiences is that I want more perspectives, right? So you have that perspective, and I want some more perspectives because there are more perspectives, and I think that's the goal that we should be having, and we should be supporting. And now that COVID is done, we need to start going back to comedy clubs, enjoying ourselves. I love comedy, stand-up comedians in general. I want to see more stand-up comedians in roles that I see on television in different formats. Whether it's in the movies, television shows. I like that energy, and we have to create platforms for them to enjoy themselves and for us to be able to see and support them in that. It's a craft that if we want young people to learn how to do it the right way, they've got to see it. So I love that young people are coming up to YouTube and they are doing their little skits and their little routines. And I know that a lot of them want to be stand-up comedians. And I don't think they know how. And it's we have to create platforms again for them to see. And then we have to solve some of these little inner squabbles and just explain. Because I don't know if people who, from my perspective as a producer, and this is why, when I talk to you guys, I kind of give you from an insider's place of how I see things from a content standpoint of producing content, not wanting to be that content, right? So how you can use these extremely talented people and guide them, because I have nothing to do, just like all the comedians I've ever worked with, I have nothing to do with why they're funny. They're funny. They're funny because they're funny people, right? They get that divine spirit. All I try to do is put it between here and here, right? If I can see it, I can hear it, and I'll record it, right? In that box. That's all. That's the only thing I could do. And then look for it out there in the world, right? Get out of my house, leave California, go out into the world and find them, right? And that's what I enjoyed about when I was working at BT, because I was able to go out, and our way of having the go out come to us when we did business with all the comedy clubs. Uh, Let me know, guys. Hit me up. Tell me. I mean, where are the black comedy clubs anymore? And should we be doing things to encourage the creation of black comedy clubs, because they had a purpose? I mean, if it wasn't for the black comedy clubs in Chicago, I don't think that kind of talent would have been coming out of there. So we got to make sure it's like a farm system, right? It's like, excuse me, in baseball, they have a farm system to recruit. In basketball, they got AAU leagues. We got all these places where talent is formulated. I think stand-up talent starts at those clubs. And I think the more clubs you have and more areas, that it's beneficial, not only for stand-up comedians, but it generates revenue, right, for those towns. That's when you have a club, you got to hire people. You're cooking some stuff. You got entertainment. You have a place where talent. The nights that you don't have comedy, you might have a jazz night, might have an open mic night, a singers contest. So you have a lot of these different things, and you're keeping that money in the community. I know that there's we talk about some of the violence that's happening out there, but we can solve that as well too. I don't think you just don't do something because there's a couple of challenges. Let's make that a situation where we can handle it, because we have to be able to do that, especially in our world. If you want the next generations of those Eddie Murphys, man, they're not made overnight. They're coming from a lot of experiences prior to, and even starting with even high school, right? The class clown. The class clown wasn't a negative connotation, but I don't know. You guys tell me maybe next week. Being a class clown in high school now, can that kind of get you kicked out of school? Do high schools look at that the same way? Because you're just funny. Are they looking at that as that you're like undermining the classroom? And is that part of the zero tolerance? I don't know. I haven't been to high school in a while, right? So excuse me. But ask for those of you who have children in high school, please ask them and let me know. Let me know, is the class clown, is that something that you can still have, or has that been taken away as well? Because humor is one of those things that kind of reduces, or is it connected to bullying now? Is it being a class clown part of the bullying process where you just don't want that at all? I understand why certain things have to happen in high school, but it's like the creative arts in high school. Is there a comedy part of that, like stand-up comedy part, not comedic actors, but can you do stand-up comedy in a creative arts, creative high school? Can you do stand-up, not just comedy? Please, someone find that out for me, if you can actually do stand-up in high school. Can you do that at the college level when you go into theater? When you go into the arts. I graduated from Howard, and the Howard Drama School. Is there a place for stand up, or is stand up you just got to do that on your own in the city? I think if that is the case, I think that if it's not acknowledged as an art form in high school, and if it's not acknowledged as an art form in college, then I think that is an opportunity that needs to get fixed. Because I think, and the reason why I say that is because when you look at some of our greats, they're coming through the comedic side of the game, right, to the next level. You saw Bad Boys. Martin Lawrence. They're stand-up comedians is just still doing their thing, and this is something that we can kind of control, and it's an art form. It could cause more comedy clubs, which then brings commerce to neighborhoods in a natural way. And for me, like my aunts used to say when they used to watch like RNSJ and Bruce on Comic View, it was their medicine. They come home from work dealing with the man, right? And one of my aunts in Texas, she's not there anymore. But she was like, boy, that little Bruce, she's so funny. My auntie, she get her little taste and get her little laughter from Bruce, and that was her medicine. You know what I mean? So comedy has always been a way for us to take some of that energy that that is given to us on a daily basis, that we don't want. And it's our medicine, just like music is, or entertainment in general. But it's something about laughing that just, can just change your day, and you can just kind of sit back and do that. Last thing I want to talk to you about today is I saw in the news that Anthony Anderson and Cedric the Entertainer have come out with their own barbecue sauce, and it's at Arby's, right? So again, as we're starting to talk about support and economic support and moving things through, now this is their barbecue sauce that's at Arby's, so it's not Arby's barbecue sauce, right? So I don't know if any of you guys are in towns that have Arby's. There was an Arby's in in Pennsylvania, and I have to double check out here in California if there's an Arby's out here. But I say that if you're going to go get a sandwich and you're going to go get fast food and you're going to go get something that has barbecue sauce on it, well, why not do an Anthony Anderson and Cedric and the Entertainer? Are they two people who you believe have done harm to the Black community? Do you think probably their success will support new success? Cedric, which was one of the kings of comedy and was a host of Comic View, is that the kind of progression? And now he's got his show on CBS. Andy Anderson, I mean, come on now. I've been watching Blackish Spectrum TV now, and they give me like a mini package, and I get some black channels, and man, I tell you, I've been watching Blackish, and you know what else? I'm sorry, but I just got to tell you this. I don't know if you guys are going to feel the same thing, but I was a big growing up. Good Times, What's Happening, and Sanford and Son. I'm telling my age, but that was just my hardcore thing. But for the last couple of weeks, since the fires up here in Altadena, and I just needed to relief from this nonsense. Man, I've been watching like back to back the Parkers. If you're, man, watch the Parkers. And you got to watch them back to back because it's just, man, yo, there's just so many like little nuances. Like I was watching a lot of a different world because I haven't seen that in a long time. Kind of reminded me of being at Howard. So I first started on that, and then I know this is gonna sound weird, but I've been watching the Parkers and Family Matters. But that Parkers, you got to. Oh my God, it's hilarious. And so we need more, man, we need more of that. And Monique, stand-up comedian. Right? See how that works? But we need to create new Moniques, right? There's a 16-year-old, 15-year-old girl now in high school somewhere, and I hope being a class clown, but she's not getting kicked out of school for it, And like, where does she take that energy? Does she have to now turn into a thespian and be a comedic actress, or can she just do stand-up? It's like, is there a breadth for stand-ups in our world? Please, someone hit me back up and let me know if there is such a thing as that. If in those art schools that you can get into stand-up comedy as a craft, and at the college level, especially and any of you guys that go to HBCUs, please let me know there if that. I know they do that kind of sketch comedy kind of thing, but it's just not urban sketch comedy at some of those PWIs. And so let me know if you can do that at an HBCU, because I think that's really important. And if any of you guys go to Howard or go to Morgan or Southern or Grambling, well, hit me up. Let me know if you can then do that, because I think that is a different type of talent that's sitting out there that we need to feed, because we see at the end game people who are good at that craft, how they generate revenue, and they do these stand-up shows and sell out stadiums. That's all in the business, generating stuff, generating comedy clubs, theaters. Black theaters in the Black neighborhoods could be revitalized. Showtime at the Apollo could be in every major city in America, right? So the whole Apollo thing, but we got to generate that from the grassroots. And I would say the grassroots would be simply starting from a comedy club in your hometown, right? Or someone who wants to, open up a store or open up a little spot, and then just put a little stage up there. They have something else going on, but they put a little stage up there as well. So again, it was great being with you guys again. Please like and subscribe. And again, I will be addressing things that I kind of see coming up. And this case of Corey and with Godfrey, my suggestion is, hey guys, put that energy together and create a product with that, and so we can then support that and take that energy and guide it. Right. So these are just my producing thoughts for you guys. I will see you guys again. Hopefully, I might have to come in a little early next week. I have to check my calendar, but my whole thing is coming on every Wednesday. Normally, it's from 7. And I might play around some different times because my schedule's kind of moving a little bit. But for right now, 7 o'clock on Pacific time, 10 o'clock Eastern time. And as always, I'll see you guys again. This is another little aspect of the way we do it. Take care, everyone.